Good morning. Welcome back to the broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, April 8th, 2021. And here are our top stories. What the American Rescue Plan means for corporate and union pensions, and state legislatures tackle pension solvency. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Jason Franken. He's a principal actuarial consultant with Foster & Foster. Jason, welcome back to the program. Great to see you again. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me back, Jeff.
And I see you're back in the office. How are things going? Before we start talking about the American Rescue Plan, how are things going in the office of Foster & Foster?
Well, we're slowly but surely getting back to the office here in Illinois. In Florida, we have more of our people back in the office. It's more open down there. The state of Illinois, we're slowly but surely getting there. Hopefully, we continue that direction. Some of the uptick in cases has me a little nervous, but with the vaccine being rolled out, I'm optimistic that we'll be back to business as usual, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I took note before the interview that we saw the whiteboard before you. I'm hoping that at some point we can get you to do some actuarial calculations on that whiteboard at some point.
Well,
so
I'd be happy to do that. I'm not sure how excited your audience would be about that, but maybe they need something to help them get to sleep at night. So I'd be happy to do that sometime.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely have to think about doing that and how we can do that in a way that maybe is engaging and also educational. So Jason, let's talk about this American Rescue Plan. Many Americans know, if they follow any news, if they follow this program, that there was a passage of a bill, and that bill actually helps both union, multi-employer, and corporate pension plans. Why don't you unpack it for us? What does this bill actually do?
Yeah, well, there are several things that the bill does from a pension perspective. I'll start with the corporate or single employer plans. For those plans, it really gives them some extension on their contribution requirements. So, for example, they're currently required to pay their unfunded liability over a 7-year period. So all of the amortizations are based on a 7-year period. However, this bill allows them to extend that to a 15-year period. So it does give them, a longer time period in which they can pay off their unfunded liabilities. Secondly, it does adjust the interest rate corridor. So the corporate plans have prescribed interest rates. And this, there's a corridor in which, they can choose their interest rate. And that corridor was adjusted as part of this to, essentially it allows them to potentially be able to use a slightly higher interest rate for a longer period of time. And the higher the interest rate that an actuary uses in their calculation, the lower the liabilities and the lower their contribution requirement is. Go ahead.
Jason, would it be safe to say, well, let me ask you this. How did corporate pensions do in general? I know there's a lot of reports out there that get posted, but how did they do as a result of this pandemic? Does it just vary by the size of the organization? Because that's a liability on the balance sheet of a corporation, right? So they've got to reflect that in their return. They've got to reflect that in their balance sheet, et cetera. How did they do in 2020?
Yes, so it depends on a number of factors. From a pension plan specific perspective, the returns for the plan, a calendar year plan, we're seeing returns, 12, 13% in that range. So, their investment returns for the year were much higher than most people would have anticipated. And frankly, I was a little surprised by that, especially last year at the end of March when the market was down, 25%, to end up where it did was, remarkable, to be honest with you. On the other side, obviously they have to make the contributions, and many companies were hit very hard by the pandemic, and their revenues are down. So from that perspective, it depends on how the company did in general, how they were able to navigate the pandemic. A lot of places had to close down and lost significant amounts of revenue. So from that perspective, the companies or corporations might not have done that well. But from a pension plan perspective, their returns were really, really strong. And, that actually helps them, it probably decrease their unfunded liability a little bit. The interest rates, that's another thing that goes into it. The lower the interest rate, the higher their liability is. So the fact that interest rates have continued to go down over the last year, that was another thing that, probably increased their liabilities. So it is going to be a company by company case, by a company case on how each pension plan did during the pandemic.
And we're going to get to multi-employer plans in just 1 minute, but just to follow up on that, this bill actually helps preserve the corporate pension plan, because by extending out the corridor, creating the corridor, extending out from 7 to 15 years, now you're not to make those contributions and to become more well funded. There's not this incentive to discontinue the plan, or in the case of a corporate plan, transfer the liabilities, like do a pension risk transfer.
Yeah, definitely. It makes their pension contribution more affordable in the short term, rather than having a potentially larger spike in their contribution requirements and not being able to afford it, and having to look to offload that liability or make some changes. This definitely does help preserve the pension plan, because it makes the contributions more manageable in the short term.
So let's shift gears. A lot of people, the focus of the American Rescue Plan was really multi-employer plans. These are typically union plans, Teamsters, AFL-CIO, et cetera. A lot of good things here as well, Jason.
Yes. So on the multi-employer, the Taft-Hartley side, there were similar measures taken to extend the amortizations, make the contributions more manageable in the short term. The biggest, the biggest part of this legislation, though, for multi-employer plans was the special financial assistance. And this has been in the works for a while. It didn't pass, I think, when it came out originally in 2019. I think it passed the House, but did not pass the Senate. So part of this, this special financial assistance was to help the funds that are in the worst shape, those that are what's called critical and declining, or those plans that are going to be insolvent in the next 5 to 10 years, those plans that have funded ratios less than 40%. So essentially what this legislation does is it creates a pool of $86 billion that will be granted to these plans to help meet their pension obligations, that their pension payments over the next 30 years. So this is the PBGC is going to make these payments, but the payments are the money's coming straight from the Treasury. It's not being collected through PBGC premiums the way the PBGC currently works. So this is going to help those plans that are in really bad shape make sure that their retirees receive their full pensions, for the next 30 years. And obviously that's a big step for those plans that are, that were facing insolvency and really had no place else to turn.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is take away a benefit on someone, for anyone, but in general for someone, especially someone who's on a fixed income. That would be horrible, horrific, and put a lot of people in financial straits, which would be the opposite of what we're trying to achieve in retirement.
Yeah, so, and to that, typically once a benefit's accrued, it cannot be reduced. That's really standard pensions for pensions across the country. A handful of years ago, there was legislation that was put into place to try to help these plans. And one of the things that could be done was they could lower they could reduce benefits that had already been earned, not just for active employees, but for retirees. Yeah. And so there's been, a lot of these cases where retirees who like you said, are on a fixed budget, who have had their pensions cut in the last 3 or 4 years. And so this would help them as well, because those benefits would be reinstated, I think, in most cases.
Yeah, that would be absolutely horrific to people. Thanks, Jason. When we come back, we'll take a tour around state government. There's a lot going on in state legislatures, including pension reform or possible pension reform. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to Jason Franken of Foster & Foster. Jason, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
No problem.
Yeah, and this is always a great conversation because I think we get there are different sectors of the economy that we're talking about. We've got the multi-employer, Taft-Hartley. We've got the corporate. We already covered that, but there's a lot going on, and we've had you on the show talking about what's going on with state and local governments. Some of those plans are underfunded, and some of those states and municipalities are looking for ways to cure this insolvency or this potential insolvency. What are your thoughts? What's going on with some of the state legislatures around the country?
Yeah, this isn't a new thing. As I've discussed in prior shows, there's been a lot of movement over the last decade, especially since the financial crisis, to try and get the pension liabilities under control. And one of the ways that you go about that is to change the benefits that are being offered. And in some cases, such as Illinois, where I am, the pension benefits are protected by the state constitution. So once an employee is hired, whatever their benefits are when they're hired, you have to provide those benefits to them for the length of their career. So you can't change the benefits for any of the current active employees. You can only change it prospectively for new hires that come into the system. And so they've addressed that, and many states have addressed this by implementing a new tier of benefits. So anyone hired, let's just say after January 1st of 2021, gets different benefits than those people that were hired prior to that date.
Right.
And this is going to help down the road. It doesn't provide really any savings immediately, because it only applies to people as they're brought into the population. So the state of Illinois made this change back in 2010, and we're to the point now where maybe 45% of the population is under this new tier of benefits. So the savings is really really slow to be generated, and it's going to take a long time before you'll really see that. But you are on a different path, and that path is going to provide some relief from a pension liability perspective relative to where it was, but it can be really, really slow. Other places you can potentially change the benefits for actives prospectively. As I mentioned in the last segment, you can't take benefits away. You can't reduce benefits that have already been earned. So there's no silver bullet to reduce your unfunded liability. You can really only change it going forward. But these are difficult conversations when you're talking about the pensions of teachers and first responders. These are significant parts of their compensation. So to change it is really slow. There are a lot of different people with opinions that are completely opposite of each other. So it does take a lot of time and debate in order for anything to be implemented in terms of changes to the pensions.
Yeah, and you mentioned having basically the intestinal fortitude, the political will to do this. If you're a politician, you want to get reelected. That's your currency. The vote is the currency. You look at what's happening in Vermont. They had proposed, I think the treasurer and governor have proposed some recommendations to reform the pension plan. And just recently, the Speaker of the House, I believe, in Vermont legislature basically said, well, we're going to table this and we're going to do a long-term study. That really doesn't deal with the issue today. It kind of kicks the can down to kind of, hey, we're going to come up with it. And by the way, when you do that, you leave it to the next round of politicians who are going to deal with that, right? Because not every politician, they have different terms and different limits and when they're going to retire and not be a part of, maybe they move in different parts of government. So this is not an easy discussion to have. And there's this tension that builds between those who have the benefit and those who are providing the benefit. And the taxpayer, too. Let's not forget the taxpayer.
Without question, that's one of the difficult things with public pensions. Pensions are a long-term obligation and need to be managed as such. However, the people who are in charge and making the decisions are often, as you mentioned, politicians who are looking to get reelected. And so that's, as you said, those two things fight each other. I've always said there's, the politicians are more, they're not necessarily concerned with the long term. They're concerned with my term. Those are things that, make the decision making process, very difficult.
Yeah, and by the way, there's no perfect solution here because there are a lot of people. We had the Reason Foundation on, I think, last week, and they were saying it's not a 0-1 game. You don't move everyone to a 401k system and then expect the world to be a better place. There are inherent challenges with doing that. Self-directed accounts, getting participants, encourage people to come to your organization to be a police, firefighter, emergency personnel, do some of the roles that are important for government. So it's not a panacea where you just say, get rid of the pension, eliminate the benefit, and put everyone in a 401k plan. That is not really the choice. The choice is, how do you compromise? Is it some kind of hybrid solution where you're maybe changing the benefit, putting more towards a defined contribution plan, or doing something else to enhance what people are getting so that they don't feel like something is taken away and they're getting something in return?
No, it is a difficult decision or discussion regarding a defined contribution versus defined benefit of plan, especially as you look across our country, and those that are covered by 401k plans. a large percentage of those people are woefully, inadequately prepared for retirement. They're the average balance for someone near retirement, I don't have the numbers, but, is not nearly enough to, for the amount of money that they're going to need in retirement. Pensions, on the other hand, they're unpredictable. But in the public sector, it can put you in a competitive disadvantage if you don't offer one. As I think I mentioned previously, and we have one client that's, went to a 401k type plan, for their employees back in the late 90s. And now they're looking at re-implementing the pension plan just because they can't attract and retain, people to come work at their city. They're losing them to competitors. And so at least in that one case, they're looking at going back to a defined benefit plan because, it is putting them at a competitive disadvantage, and they are having difficulty, getting the people that they want to work at their municipality.
Well, certainly a lot of it's almost like an Iron Maiden, the old torture device. You move one way, you get caught. You move another way, you get caught another way. Lots to discuss. Hopefully, the legislatures. This is a big topic for them: solvency of pensions, but also solvencies of state balance sheets and municipal balance sheets. Very important. Jason Franken, always a pleasure speaking with you. Really enjoy the insightful conversation. Look forward to having you back again very soon.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more all in one place, check out today's edition of our newsletter, The Morning Pulse, and of course, our website. We're back again tomorrow, so until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.